Okay, everybody, welcome back. Please go get your photos taken. This is the coolest thing ever. This is the coolest thing ever. You got to go get your photos taken. They give you a copy right there. But don't do that during Steph's panel. I would like to introduce you to Stephanie Howlett. Stephanie is the CEO of Diversity NL and the moderator of our panel this morning. Thank you, Steph.
Absolutely, Kathy. When I'm told to do it, I show up. So I'm going to introduce to you the lovely folks we have in front of you today. So we're going to talk everything about lived experience and disability and throughout their careers and supporting disability and accessibility and what that looks like for all of us. And this is certainly a new space for me, so I'm honored to be here. So my pronouns are she, her, and her. So just introduce, we're going to start with J. Paul Walsh. So Paul is the CEO of the Autism Society of Newfoundland and Labrador, a position he's held since January 2021. So prior to that, Paul is our senior, the person with the most experience.
They told me seasoned.
Seasoned. I wasn't given that word. So he's definitely had a tremendous career of 35 years in the private sector, mostly in the electric utility industry. He's also taught for over 30 years as a sessional lecturer in the business faculty at Memorial University. So Paul has lived experience with physical disability. He has a diagnosis of CP, cerebral palsy, at birth. He's been a volunteer in the disability advocacy for over 30 years, including serving as the chair of both the Provincial Advisory Council on the Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities and the Coalition of Persons with Disabilities. Currently, Paul serves as the chairperson of the Board of Directors for Accessibility Standards of Canada. And this is something very new, I understand.
Couple of weeks.
Fantastic. So Paul as well was the 2020 recipient of the Cecilia Carroll Award for Independent Living and was named Alumnus of the Year for Gonzaga High School in 2004. So Paul is very young in 2004.
But
yeah.
Thankfully that wasn't the correct year.
So he's also a proud husband, father, grandfather, and Paul lives in St. John's with his lovely wife, Robin Bartlett. Can we get a round of applause for Paul, please? So the next person I'm going to introduce is Sherry Tucker. Sherry Tucker is a member of the services coordinator. She is the member service coordinator at Empower, the Disability Resource Center. Her role as the coordinator of social, recreational, all things fun, learning opportunities. I'm just ad-libbing with persons with disabilities in Newfoundland and Labrador. Sometimes this happens by organizing activities for local members, but more often than not, it happens through partnerships with other organizations and municipalities that want to offer more inclusive and accessible activities. So if you're looking for that, connect with Sherry. So before working this position, Sherry fulfilled a number of local and national contracts with a number of not-for-profit organizations in Newfoundland and Labrador. She credits building her skill set through early military career while studying at university. So Sherry is also a person who identifies as living with a disability and is incredibly passionate about supporting her community. When she isn't working or volunteering, you can find Sherry either cooking in the kitchen, creating art at home, or shooting pool at Westside Charlie's. Fantastic. Welcome, Sherry. So our next guest is Jill Spurgeon. So Jill, I've met through her fantastic work with Telelink. So since Jill didn't get her bio to me, I get the fun opportunity of creating a bio. What no one ever wants, by the way. I'm teasing. All good. So Jill works tirelessly and endlessly, certainly with Telelink. And Telelink this year won a very prestigious award through St. John's Board of Trade as their EDI award, if I'm not, no, the word was on cultural diversity, which is amazing. So if we can get a round of applause for that. So as well, you know, Jill works tirelessly regarding recruitment, hiring, retention, and believes strongly in hiring persons with disabilities in organizations. So she works with Telelink. So Jill is a proud mama. And in a few short months, my understanding is that she's going to be going on leave for her second bundle of joy. So congratulations, Jill, and welcome. And last but not least is definitely the sparkle to this panel, and always in all conversations we have, it's Mandy Penny. So Mandy, pronouns are she and hers. She's a dedicated professional with a strong background in social enterprise, accessibility, and inclusion. with a diverse educational background spanning psychology, sociology, social work, and business. She brings a multidisciplinary approach to work as a seasoned practitioner. Mandy has held various roles with Inclusion NL, where she has spearheaded many different initiatives to promote accessibility and employment equity for persons with disabilities. Certainly her commitment to advocacy and to Taylor Swift is outstanding, right? She is a Swiftie, and I think has tickets coming up in the fall to attend. So that's going to be a very amazing event. So like I said, she's very committed to advocacy, and that extends to her professional endeavors, as evidenced by her volunteer work with organizations such as DAWN Canada, which is Disabled Women's Network of Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador Patient Advocacy Council, Raising Up Fundraising in Newfoundland, Co-op, also through Empower, the Disability Resource Center. Mandy is also a skilled public speaker, regularly sharing her insights on disability rights and inclusive employment. My goodness, so many words here. Inclusive employment at conferences and forums nationwide. In her role as Employment Equity Officer with Memorial University, she provides expert guidance and support to uphold Memorial University's commitment to equity, inclusion, diversity, and employment practices. What a panel. Please welcome them. Now I'm going to take my lovely pictures back. There we go. I do want them, yeah. So we're going to start with Paul because he loves being on the hot spot. And we're going to ask Paul to share with us a little bit about your story and how you self-identify as a person. Yeah.
My story and how I self-identify. Well, so as the seasoned member of the panel,
Indeed.
I'm going to throw out a little bouquet to somebody who's very important to those of us with physical disabilities in Newfoundland and Labrador, and that's Joanne McDonald. And I don't know if any of you know Joanne, but Joanne's one of the most decorated Paralympians in Canadian history and an incredible disability advocate. So I grew up the son of a banker. We born in St. John's, but got to move all around the Maritimes because Dad kept getting transferred. So we came home when I was about 12. And at that time, they were trying to form a branch of the Canadian Paraplegic Association here in St. John's. And they were reaching out to the business community for somebody to chair the board, somebody that they felt could, reach out to the community. And my dad stepped forward, no connection to disability, to that particular disability whatsoever. So anyhow, so the initial meetings of the CPA were in our house. And so I was, 12 and kind of always followed around my dad. So I was always there and got to meet Joanne. And it was the first, and I really didn't appreciate it at the time, but the first exposure I had where somebody was disabled and it wasn't their problem. It was, they wanted to stand up and identify clearly as disabled, and the fact that society had to change, not they had to change to adapt. So you fast forward a bunch of years, and we'll get into the career stuff later, I guess, but then I was at a presentation that Joanne was at, and another member of the community, after listening to me talk and not being very happy with me, got right in my grill and said, "You need to embrace your disability culture." And that's what changed for me. That's when I talked more about my disability, became very proud of my disability, to the point where a doctor said to me once, it's unfortunate, I don't know what the words were, but it was something to the effect of, "I was fortunate they couldn't fix you," to which I told them, "Well, I'm not broken, for one. And also, then they said, "Well, if we could find a surgery tomorrow that took it all away, would you do it?" I said, "Definitely not, because it's my identity." And understanding your identity, I think, is the biggest part of that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yuri, tell us a little bit about your story and how you self-identify.
Good morning. I think so. I think they're all on. So good morning. It's great to be here and see so many faces. So as mentioned in my bio, I do identify with a number of disabilities, but mine are invisible and compounded. I have a number. I have ADHD. I was born also with an autoimmune disorder, but wasn't diagnosed till I was an adult. And then I've acquired a whole list of them in my adult years as well. I won't go through the whole list, but I'm a compounded invisible disabilities. So my story is a little bit different because I have to tell people about them all the time. And that's a big part of my identity, is that I'm always saying, oh, well, I have ADHD, or, oh, I have trauma, you know, that's really harmful for me in this space or whatnot. So I do find that invisible piece is a huge part of my own identity, and even a huge part of my story. In my school years, I spent my time mostly either in the special needs classroom or in the principal's office, because I was an advocate as a very young person as well, which was a bad thing, certainly in that special needs classroom. It wasn't actually until I had entered into the cadet program and then went on into my military career and went through the regular officers training program that it was, aha, I can learn under the right circumstances if somebody is teaching me in the way that I learn. And I actually really, really thrived in that environment, and then went on to become an instructor with the military. And through those experiences, because I was in university still, I was contracted to base during the summers when I wasn't studying. And there was a summer when I was at a cadet camp. So I was working with young people, which, you know, I felt was a bit of a goofy, fun position to be in. But then about halfway through the summer, I was paired with a young man with autism. The commanding officer had came to me and said, hey, Tucker, we've got a kid that's coming with autism. He's never been away from home before. Do you think that, you know, we can put him in your group? You'd be fine? I said, oh, yeah, absolutely, sir. What's autism? And that was my attitude towards it. And, you know, I look back and, you know, how arrogant, incredibly, but my own neurodivergence saw his neurodivergence, and we just clicked. It just worked. So I came back, and I was, you know, planning on being an international human rights lawyer with the military, and I just couldn't anymore. I recognized that was my passion, and that's how I fell into the disability community. I left the military, and I actually started developing curriculums that were accessible for adults with disabilities like myself, so that they can build work skills and change their story in the same way that I kind of rewrote my story with my opportunity to join the military and to learn in a way that worked for me.
Fantastic, thank you. Jill, over to you.
Over to me. So my story is a little different. I am a proud supporter of our partnership programs with, you know, our persons with disability, Stephanie. So my story is, it started, my passion for this really
Can we
started.
hear? Sorry, I don't know if that mic is on.
It is.
Right, let's try again.
Is this good?
We're
Oh,
good.
much better. Sorry. So my story started at a younger age. So at the end of high school, I applied for a job as a respite care worker, not knowing how much of an impact it would make on my life. So I worked with a little girl who had a wide variety of disabilities, but the way she would light up when she would talk to me or see me really made a huge impact in my life. Unfortunately, things had happened. Her family moved away. So then I started working another job at a supermarket where we quickly became part of a buddy program. And that buddy program is we hired persons with disability, and they work closely with me. During that time, I was in school to do human resource management, and left and joined Telelink for my work term. After my work term, they did hire me on, but I was reconsidering my career choice because I really enjoyed that path that I was going down, and helping people and, you know, kind of guiding them. I quickly realized within my first year of Telelink how much we support our partnership programs and how much it meant to them that I really wanted to stay and be a part of that and make a difference in our work, the work that we do, hiring persons with disability. So it's something that I'm really proud of. It's super near and dear to my heart. So that's why I'm here, and that's my story.
Thank you.
So, hi everyone. Thanks for having me today. So, my name's Manny, and I identify as a person with a disability, a physical disability, as well as a mental health disability. Because if you experience enough barriers due to accessibility, after 3 decades, it's hard to not come out with a mental health disability. My education was in psychology, but then I moved towards social work because I realized a lot of the issues that people experienced were not related to themselves, it was related to society itself. So by removing the societal barrier, the person would thrive. And then due to my disability and accessibility concerns, I couldn't get a job in social work. So then I started volunteering with Empower, the Disability Resource Center, in fund development. And then the inclusion volunteer crew. And eventually I got a job with Inclusion NL and started working with employers who wanted to become more inclusive to people with disabilities, which then led me to do my MBA in social enterprise and entrepreneurship, because I thought, instead of helping employers become more inclusive to people with disabilities, why don't we help people with disabilities start their own businesses, because they already have many insights into accessibility. So that would remove a lot of the work, as well as entrepreneurship can be a great avenue for people who are having trouble attaching themselves to the labor market. And then when I did my MBA, I became more interested in human resources and organizational behavior and equity as a whole. So I had a lot of friends who were international students from other countries and other backgrounds looking for employment, and just seeing what barriers they face in employment and the barriers I faced. I had empathy for them. And so I branched out towards not just accessibility and inclusive employment for people with disabilities, but all people facing barriers. So then I stayed with Inclusion NL for 5 years and then joined Memorial in August. And now I'm on the board of Empower NL, so I'm not very far. They can't get rid of me.
I don't think they want to get rid of you. So I'd like for each of you, because we're taking this positive strengths perspective, and I think it's important to look at it in different lights. So can you all define what success is to you? What is success to Paul? That's a big one, I know, but break it down. What does success look like for you as a person, for you as a person with a disability, for you as your fabulous self?
The older I get up every morning, I go, good, I got another one.
Woo!
But
Yeah.
I think success is being true to yourself. I think that if you live in a space where you enjoy what you're doing, you enjoy your life, you enjoy things around you, you demand a lot of society to make sure that you can participate. And like all of my panel members here, if that doesn't happen, we speak out. And that's not always a comfortable space. But if you're really happy with yourself in terms of what you're doing, how it's going, how you're taking the gifts and talents that you can bring to the table and apply them in a beneficial way to those around you. And I think that's truly set that and being, I mean, my greatest success are my 2 children, for sure. So that and being a dad.
Absolutely. Thank you. Sherry, success, what does it mean to you?
That's okay. I don't know which one doesn't work, so I'm going to go with what I know works. So as, again, somebody with an invisible disability, this question actually kind of struck out to me as kind of an oof question, because my definition of success and my standard of what success looks like for me, not what I project on other people, is actually unreasonably high. And I've come to learn that in the last few years, that it is unreasonably high and exhausting, the standard. But because of the stigma I have fought against, and because I've always had to say, but this thing, I'm carrying this thing, it's really heavy, I've developed a lot of masks, like most people that have invisible disabilities. So success, I'm redefining it for myself actually as a person with an invisible disability. I'm working really hard at it. It's still in work. I know my coworkers would, say, well, it's not perfect. You're still working at that. But I am redefining what that looks like. And my success, I recognize, can look different every day. Depending, especially for those disabilities that are episodic and they swing, if I'm not well and I manage to get up and I make my breakfast and I feed my cat and, we still survive and we make it to the next day, yeah, that's success. I don't have to be on a panel each day to say that I had a successful day. So I liked that question for that reason, because my invisible disability has very much shaped what success means for me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, I think success for me looks different in different aspects of my life. I think personally success is raising 2 tiny humans to be kind, caring, compassionate, and just be good humans. In my career, success for me, and it really, joining this panel caused me to self-reflect, and it's to hire people with team members with disabilities to make sure that, that they have a successful employment with us. And then I looked back and reflected yesterday and all the team members that we've hired through our different partnership programs that have advanced in their career with us. That they started as a frontline team member who quickly moved up. Some are in sales now, some of our supervisors. So my success for me looks like that we're giving meaningful employment, and we're an inclusive and diverse employer. And it's something that we preach every single day. And I think to see long-term team members that we've hired through our partnership programs really thrive in our environment, that is a major success and win for me.
So I think success for me would be always growing and setting new goals for yourself. So often we have a disability, there's a ceiling you hit. So like you can't move jobs to make more money because financially you'll be penalized, or people in your life might not set goals for you. So for example, nobody really thought I would get an MBA, let alone finish high school. So I'm very impressed with myself for doing that, which allowed me to get full-time permanent employment and achieve a lot of goals that many people with disabilities don't get to do.
Absolutely. And I think maybe a lot of us would agree that when we see disability or someone with a disability that we can see that's in plain sight for us, that we make assumptions. And there's so many biases that we have when we don't meet the person and see their fabulous strengths and get to see what they're doing as people, right? Like that's one of the things I think that we all do is let's try checking our assumptions when it comes to disability, when it comes to different accessibility needs that people have. So another question is, what's the best way to talk about disability or disabilities? So when we're talking about that, what's people's comfort zones? How should that be talked about?
Mandy's got the mic.
Yeah, go for it, Mandy.
So I think when you're talking about people with disabilities, you should ask the person you're talking about how they want to identify, because everybody's experience is different. Me and Paul have the same disability, but we have very different experiences given our life experience, our how we identify as our gender, our age, everything like that. So we have different experiences which impact our accessibility needs. So it's not just a blanket term, oh, this person with CP needs an automatic door on the bathroom or automatic button on the door. They might not need it. They might need something else. So I think just asking the person how they want to identify. And if you're not sure, say person first. And then if they want to identify another way, they'll let you know.
So it's ask, the big takeaway. Ask because, yeah, despite that people might have the same or similar disabilities, people don't have the same needs.
Mandy covered that pretty well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she did, yeah.
Anything anyone want to add? No?
I think for me, it's always learning, learning and growing. So it's always learning and growing. And I love that we can just, ask, or, it's a safe place to be comfortable to ask those questions.
Absolutely.
Of course, I changed my mind. I do have something to add.
We all did.
I would say that one thing that is critical in regards to this question is that we do talk about disabilities. I think that oftentimes we feel a little uncomfortable or a little awkward. We might say the wrong thing. We might label somebody wrong. Is it person first or is it identity first? Stop worrying about that so much. If the person is offended, they can let you know if that language needs to be corrected. Recognizing that evolution evolves in time. There was a long time when person first was definitely the only way to go. I am a person with disability, and that is how I identify, a person with disabilities. But for a lot of folks, it is such a critical part of their identity that they choose identity first to say, I am disabled. This is such a critical part. So at the end of the day, ask the person, believe them, respect their choices, but don't stop talking about disabilities, because it's critical in order to move that needle forward that we continue those conversations, even if they feel a little uncomfortable, even if it feels a little bit out of our realm. Just talk about it and just kind of let those things shake away.
I shouldn't have gone last year because everybody said everything. But yeah, they asked the person for sure. I heard a presentation where somebody said that everyone should have a T-shirt that says ATP to remind to ask the person. But the whole thing evolves because I always knew I had a disability. And then the first time anyone ever used the term person with disabilities, I was getting on the Marine Atlantic Ferry and I had my little, I call it my VIP parking permit, my blue zone parking permit. And they say, oh, I see you're a PWD. And I looked over my shoulder. I said, oh what? But it changes, and it's got to be where you are now. Because it's part of my identity, I refer to myself as disabled. I know in the community which I'm privileged to serve, in the autistic community, it's very much identity based. That you hear most people refer to themselves as autists or autistics. But occasionally somebody will say, "Well, I don't like that. I like to be called a person with autism." Sure, whatever works for you. The big thing is, and it's then going back to something that was said in the opening presentation. When it comes to identity, it's up to the person. And sometimes those in the ableist community will say, well, I don't think, I've had people tell me, you shouldn't call yourself disabled. And I just look and go, oh, yeah, you're such an inspiration. Oh my goodness, I hate that. My good friend Nancy Reed, she has this little thing she goes on about the inspirational thing, and we all kind of roll our eyes and giggle because it drives you. It's just, I'm just another dude trying to get through life, man. But yeah, so it's making sure you're true to yourself in whatever identity you take.
Absolutely. Jill, just a little bit about from the employer perspective, because we don't always see employers embracing the disability component of hiring. And I guess a question for you around that is, what do you want to let people know about hiring persons with disabilities?
I feel like the short answer is just do it. You'll have no regrets. I think that some of our best team members are the team members that we've hired with disabilities. They try to work harder than anyone else I know. And they've, and then also the partnerships that you form with the team that you're recruiting with. They know your business. They know what you're looking for. They know what you do, what you're looking for to hire, and they're helping you go through the applicants. So they'll screen them. They're essentially taking off some of your recruitment process and saving you time there. But once you bring them into the door, it's just do it. I think it's just they work so hard, and they're a crucial part of our team, and I think it's just Did I answer your question, Stephanie?
Absolutely. I think it's one of the hesitancy, though, that maybe some of you as employers have. Like, should I? How do I? What's it going to look like? What's it going to feel like? Is the person going to fit in? Who loves those words? Fit in?
Yeah.
Right? Like, are they going to be a part of our culture? Like, do I have the right words? It's all those, I think, fear.
Yeah.
It's going to cost me money.
Yeah, is it going to cost me money? But you know what? Everything costs you money as an employer.
Wrong thing.
Will I say the wrong thing? Do the wrong thing? All those parts.
But I think that's really good when we work with those partnership programs, that they're there to answer questions. And they're responding so quick. If we need any help or we need advice or we need guidance, we just reach out to the team that we've hired them through, and they're there to walk us through every step of the way.
So I guess bottom line, you're always going to have some difficulties no matter who you hire.
Exactly.
So why not take an opportunity and hire folks that are going to be committed to your organization? They're going to be your best seller. They're going to be your best person that's really going to give it, I'd say 150%, not even 100%, right? Because I know some of the folks that you've hired that it's a win. It's such a big win, but it's such one of those things that I think people feel uncomfortable in doing in the hiring piece. And I'm not sure why.
I couldn't tell you either, because I think it's something that is embedded in my culture, who I am, and then our team. They were doing it. I started with Telelink 8 years ago, and they were doing it well before then. So I think it's part of who we are now. And so I don't fully understand why people wouldn't, but I respect it.
Absolutely. Thank you. So a little bit about this one. So this is an interesting one, and I'm always learning in this area about accessibility. So how has accessibility impacted your lives? That's a big one, I know. Because living in St. John's and living in Newfoundland and Labrador, I gotta say, we're not that accessible, folks. Like we're truly not in many different levels. Let's have a talk about that one.
Accessibility has impacted every part of my life for the last 32 years. It impacts how you get to work through GoBus or Metrobus. It impacts where you live because there's not much accessible housing that you can afford in the city. It impacts how you get around for your personal life or work meetings and everything in your life. I don't even think I realized how much accessibility impacted my life till COVID happened. So for example, when we all started working from home and you could have meetings virtually, and and everyone was getting accommodated, not just people with disabilities. I remember doing my MBA and working part-time, and I said to my friend, I don't feel like I'm as far ahead as all my classmates, and I'm really tired. And she said, well, Mandy, everything probably takes you 3 times as long as someone without a disability. Like getting ready for the day, getting your work stuff ready. By the time I get to work, I've already had probably half my day, because you get up early to get ready, and then working with Go Bus and that, so that you're exhausted. So I think it impacts every part of your life, which can be good and bad, because it teaches you a lot of skills.
Does. Absolutely. Sherry.
My experience with accessibility is a little bit different. Again, it's because of the invisible disability, but for me, my biggest barriers was actually access to systems that I could work within and fit in. So access to education was huge. I had to literally fight my way and sneak out of the special education room in order to get an education. So I think I might be one of the only people in Newfoundland and Labrador to have gone from special needs into French immersion. That was the crack I found.
Wow.
In order to be able to get out of that classroom, because they weren't allowed to say no to anyone who wanted to learn the second official language. But there's always had to be little workaround pieces in regards to access. And even with accommodation, my workplace accommodations are not necessarily obvious, nor are they necessarily standard. So what has been really important to me is having a really understanding employer. Shout out to Kathy, who is very much that, but also a caring employer to notice, be like, are you chained to your laptop when your brain's not doing the thing? Because give that up, Sherry. Go take a walk. You don't need to feel chained to your laptop because it's 3:30 and that's technically a part of your workday. So access for me and accommodation does look a little bit different. And for me, accessibility is making somebody feel like they're welcome and safe in a space, and asking them, what do you need to feel welcome and safe in this space? Because it may not be obvious. It may not be something you can see. It might be invisible, what it is that somebody needs.
I'd like to talk about that one a little bit, because when we're hiring, and a lot of you may be HR or amongst the team that are doing hiring, so do we ever ask, how can we best support you as a person with your needs? A lot of us don't. We just assume the person's going to speak up, but really then we're relying on that person to give you a whole bunch of information, and it may not feel that safe for us to do that. So just a recognition from employers of like, how best can I support you? Be your best self.
Absolutely. And beyond that, likelihood is that they've had a million experiences already where they've been told, no, I'm not going to accommodate that. No, that's not reasonable. Oh, we're going to work through lunch. I think Paul was actually in a meeting with me, and I kind of, like, by the end of the meeting, I was kind of vibrating, and I said it was a disability related meeting. And at the end, I was like, you accommodated everybody today except for me. Everybody knows I have ADHD. I said, I'm ready to flip a table and run to Marystown right now. Like, my whole body is in dysregulation. And there was like and everybody in the room, nobody intended to do that. We were all disability advocates that were in the room, but there was that, I didn't think about you. I didn't know. So it's really important that, again, we don't expect the person to be like, well, actually, I can't work through lunch because I need to run around the building 3 times, and do my little rain dance in order to be able to fit back into this meeting space. So ask a person, and don't just leave it to the person to feel like they need to beg for their accommodation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, you're good.
I think I'll just touch on that is when I was early on in hiring, we hired a team member that in the interview, very outgoing, it was eager to work, and you could tell that she just had a great positive upbeat attitude. And then I remember a week after he had started, I kind of saw that dwindle a little bit. So I reached out to a partnership program. I'm like, I think something's a little off with so-and-so. I just want to know, is this something you should reach out to, or should I? And she said, just ask him. And I'll never forget her saying that. So I did just ask him. And it was as simple as this person, where they were sitting, made them feel uncomfortable. But they didn't feel comfortable enough at that time to just say, could I move? And for us, it was just adjustments to them sitting at one section of our center versus the other. And that person is still with us and thriving. So I'm thankful that I just asked.
That's a great point.
just as always comes back to it. Disability and accessibility is all about removal of barriers that cover all 5 elements of disability that are on the disability pride flag, including invisible disabilities. And that's something that certainly the things outside of physical disability, my world has grown, my vision has grown both through the Provincial Advisory Council and certainly the work I do now. But I remember I had finished my BCom and went into what I thought was my career. 2 years later, I said, no, I'm out of here and went back to school. But I was hired in this company, and a great company, a great national company. And I remember the person saying to me at the end of the interview, everything is great, Paul, but just I want to ask you, is there anything about your disability that's going to prevent you from doing this job? And when I think back on that now, it's like, hey, he wouldn't get away with asking that now. But of course, what was my answer? No, because I wanted the job. And so we often, hide things and what we need. But except one of the things that drew me to the Accessibility Standards Canada Board was the fact that it's a goal around a barrier-free Canada. And that's a lofty goal, by barrier-free Canada by 2040. And when I first said 2040, I said, wow, that's a long time. And then I did the math and I went, oh man, it's not that long. I was in Ottawa last week. I think it was last week. I've been traveling. I don't even know what day it is most of the time. And I had a chance to visit, and I encourage anybody, and they love giving tours. If you're ever in Gatineau, find Accessibility Standards Canada and say, I'd like a tour of your office. It was built with the highest standards, international standards possible for accessibility. They're in a shopping mall. They took the top floor of an old Sears store, gutted it, and started from the beginning. And they were telling me the stories about how Procurement Canada would say, no, we can't do that. Yeah, you can't. We're going to do that. And they had the mandate from their bosses to be able to do whatever they wanted. When I walk, I have to look down because I have to know where my feet are going. Because if they go in the wrong place, my nose hits the ground really quickly. The wayfinding in that office was something I'd never experienced because I didn't have to look down. And where the lighting was and how it was applied to each individual cubicle, how the sound was measured, what the colors were, way past the things that Mandy and I experienced with regards to how wide the door is or whether or not there's an automatic door opener. Something as simple as in the incredible accessible washroom that was done properly. You know those little red buttons you push if you need help? There was one on the wall, but there was one just above the floor. And I kind of looked down and I said, that's interesting. And they said if you fall, you can't reach the one on the wall. So there needs to be one there so you can hit it. And I went, now that's what that office. And the funny thing is they built that office to those standards for lower cost than most offices that were being built then. So it shows what's possible. So it's about breaking down barriers. It's able to be done. That office proves it can be done. It doesn't cost a lot of money, which is usually what you hear. Oh, we have to accommodate this and accommodate that. Do it right the first time and you'll actually save money.
It doesn't happen by accident.
Well, it doesn't happen by accident. It's very intentional. Absolutely.
So what are you all most proud of in life to today? What does that look like for you? Those who've had kids, I know you're proud of your kids. You're proud of that accomplishment. But for yourselves, because some of you are very modest people, I know that. What are you most proud of?
I noticed you didn't look at me when you said modest. No. You looked at Mandy with her sparkles.
You got a sparkle too, Paul.
I
know.
It's called the shine off the forehead, Stephanie.
We can polish later.
Yeah.
Sparkle, sparkle.
Sparkle
Right.
is sparkle.
Yeah.
What am I most proud of? Well, yeah, you've already eliminated the obvious one of my children, but
On purpose.
on purpose, because that's what I was going to say. But so it said Electric Utility. I worked for Newfoundland Power for 33 years. I love that employer. They were incredibly great to work with. They are great as a retiree. We still feel part of the team. They were an accommodating employer. They grew with me and grew their understanding with me. But when the opportunity, when I found about the job I have now being advertised, and they wanted someone with a financial administrative background that had a lens on disability, I said, no, it's really too close, and I was in an early retirement window, so I applied and I ended up getting that job, and I've never worked harder in my entire life until I worked in the nonprofit world, let me tell you. But I've never been happier to do it. And I'm proud of myself for taking that jump away from the safety of a big corporation. And then to be able to discover the community I have the privilege of representing many times and working with. And I've just fallen in love with that community. So I think I'm proud of myself for taking that leap and for all of the returns it's given me.
Amazing. Thank you.
This was actually the hardest question on your list. I was really hoping that this was one of those panels where you could skip, a question, you weren't directed. But I did give this some thought, and for me, I'm very proud that I can create safe spaces for people where they believe that they can try. And they can try again, and they can try again. And frig, they can try again, 10 more times if they need to. And I think that that is what I'm most proud of, because we can create incremental differences just by creating confidence in a person and a belief that they can, really fight the fight themselves and to empower themselves.
I'm going to echo that a little bit. I think something that I'm super proud of, first of all, is way outside my comfort zone. So I'm proud that I actually got up and did this today, because it is something, I thank you, that I'm very passionate about. But it is creating a safe place, whether it's in my personal life with my family or friends. I tend to be kind of the go-to there, and I'm really proud that I'm able to do that. But most importantly, in our workplace, that I have created, and I make it known right from orientation, not by what I say, but what I do. So I think it's just creating a safe place in my work and my personal and my work life.
What am I most proud of besides getting Taylor Swift tickets?
Yes, yes, that's the obvious, I know.
I say I'm most proud of getting to where I am so far in my life, where it's like it wasn't easy to leave my other job where I was so accommodated and it had such a big network to move to an institution. And so that was a big thing, because I always want to grow. I never want to be stuck and doing the same thing every day. So I'm very proud of myself for taking that leap and still maintaining my connections with my network and my Empower family and friends on this panel. So I'm very glad that I made that leap, even though I was really nervous as a person with a disability who's often told, you're comfortable, you're safe, you're doing well, stay where you're to.
Absolutely. How do we, yeah, absolutely. Applause there. How do we become, all of us here in this room today, how do we become better allies? Like allyship is a big term that we use a lot. So how do we become better allies? The accessibility, disability, what does that look like for us?
The biggest challenge for those of us who identify as disabled is ableism. And ableism means, that the school bus is not the same for you, and you can't expect it to be the same, or the city bus, or and I say that as former chair of the St. John's Transportation Commission, so which I fought for, tried to get better paratransit, or we can accommodate this, and there isn't any buts. It's got to be an inclusive society, a society that's equitable, and a society so that everyone has the same advantage. Nobody has a bigger advantage or a lower advantage. Everyone has the same advantage in life, regardless of disability or any other matter. So if you have the privilege, I'll call it, maybe it's not the right word, but if you are able-bodied, to be an ally means that you don't say, that stairs are okay in that house. My wife is so sick of me. We're driving down and saying, as we drive down the neighborhood, what a beautiful house. And I go, yeah, it's got too many stairs. First thing. So building accessible architecture. We can't do that without the able-bodied community allying with us so that we can change architectural standards so that they fit everybody, especially as we age.
Yeah. So maybe it's putting an and in there, not a but. And, right?
What I would like to add to that, again, from the perspective of an invisible disability, believe us. You know, and especially recognize the amount of vulnerability it takes to disclose that, you know, maybe you're struggling with something, that you have a challenge. I mean, we all would love to be perfect. So it takes a lot of vulnerability to disclose your challenges, to disclose your barriers. To ask for the things you need takes a lot of energy as well. And I've been in so many situations, and I know we like to say like, oh yeah, but though it's accessible now and people will just meet your needs. I appreciate that you laugh there, because especially with invisible disabilities, that's not always the case. I've been in a lot of professional settings with a disability as the expert, as a specialist in the area, and been denied accommodations like having my camera turned off, because I don't want everybody looking at the fact that I'm, you know, bouncing on a ball and I feel like I'm a big kid while I'm bouncing on the ball or playing with my toys. And even it was only a couple of years ago, I was in a kind of a national training program in a pilot, and really was struggling and was openly disclosing my disability. And then at the end of it was even kind of mocked. They gave out these mock awards, and I got the award for being the most distracting, when I had asked for the accommodation of turning my camera off, and they felt that that was just too much of an ask. So believe us, believe that if we're saying we need something, it's not because I want to slack off and take a nap. I don't even know how to nap. Like, I literally go to therapy to learn how to do that kind of stuff, to rest. So I'm definitely not taking a nap, but maybe I'm making cookies or something, because that's what I need to do in order to stay engaged. But I've had so many situations where people just didn't believe me and said, no, you don't really need what you're asking for. So if somebody is saying they need something, just believe them. Especially at the doctor's office, yes.
I think I'll just build on Sherry. I think it's, you know, when you ask, it's then supporting and then doing, following through with what you're asking them or what they're asking you for. So for me, it's yes, absolutely believing, but it's the follow through. So doing what they're asking. And if you're not sure, just keep asking the questions to see how you can support them and what more that they need. So it's the follow through for me.
And to build on that is the follow through between from recruiting people and doing the interview and the onboarding to having them in the workplace. So making sure you don't just accommodate them for the interview, and then when they get there, you don't accommodate them, or you don't check in to make sure what they need. And as well, remember that it's not just physical disabilities, it's all disabilities. Visual, hearing, deaf. And I think COVID helped us realize that. So a lot of people, they use accessibility supports such as closed captioning, but they might not realize that's an accessibility need. So realizing accessibility is more than just a built environment. And if you don't know where to go, there's lots of organizations that'll help you, such as Inclusion NL and the Autism Society, and they have people that help employees with disabilities find employment, and they'll help you as an employer. So just reach out if you don't know.
We have time for a question. Anyone in the audience have a question? Don't be shy. Or online? Anyone online have a question? Not on.
Is on.
A question was written down here.
You actually just turned off the microphone.
Hello? Okay. Sorry. Okay. So it says that as someone who identifies as a person with disability, do you feel societal pressure to perform or give like 150% at work? Okay.
The answer was always.
Okay, yes, thank you.
A resounding always from everyone here. I think we have a couple of questions. One right here first.
Thank you. It's not necessarily a question, more a statement, I guess. It's something you could probably comment on as well. I found one of the biggest issues. I'm in the military. I've been in there 19 years. And there seems to be a disconnect between the terms diversity and inclusivity, because especially based upon the current political climate, there's a big push to have that person in the workplace. But the government up here isn't actually providing guidance to people down here on how to make that happen. So we had somebody with a physical disability hired, and it was a big deal. But they were put in a 60-year-old building that has no elevators, and there's no funding ever for fixing buildings. So it creates a climate where you're impacting the person and preventing them from actually being part of the workplace. So that person was hired, put in their workplace, and then they immediately realized they couldn't be there. So the immediate response was, well, they can work from home. That's good, but now you've removed that person from the workplace they're supposed to be part of. And that's probably something you can all speak to.
The socialization of work is really important. So having the person there, there's legislation in place in this province that if you're renovating a building and say you're renovating the fourth floor of a 6-story building, you have to make the fourth floor accessible. But you don't have to make an ability to get to the fourth floor, which makes absolutely no sense. You're right. The direction doesn't come always, and it's not just the federal government. You know, sometimes we'll want to hire somebody for, you know, and this is one of the things that I think all of us are probably annoyed by as much as anything is there's a lot of box ticking goes on. Yep, we hired somebody. Yep, they got a disability. Oh, we get 2 points on our corporate social responsibility measure on our annual report. Tokenism, absolute token, and you know you feel that. You know, the person knows that they're only there, and you know the question came about: do you feel like you have to give 150% or whatever? It's because nobody wants to think that they got a job because they have a disability. They want to get a job because they're damn good at it. And so sometimes those of us who present with disabilities, especially you know, visible disabilities, have to go above and beyond to prove that point.
I'd like to add to that, and it was something that I had kind of added to, and I'm good at asides, that's part of my disability, that it does need to be intentional, and that was what was lacking there. They thought that inclusion would happen accidentally just by bringing the person in the building, by bringing them into the network, and I think the crucial difference there is that idea of diversity when we're just looking at it without seeing a full lens and actually looking further to say, how do we include them? Diversity is just wanting everybody in the room and saying, you know, like, oh, everybody is in the room. Inclusion is welcoming somebody into the room, including somebody in the room, making sure that they have what they need to feel safe and belong. And that the two need to go hand in hand. Both are critical. Absolutely, diversity is critical. We do need everybody in the room. That's important. But they need to get in the room and feel safe in the room and to have the same access to opportunities within that room as everybody else. So I think, yeah, it's really important that we address accessibility and inclusion with intention and not just say, oh, well, it's, you know, 2024, things just happen now. They don't. It needs to be an intentional part of what we do.
I think we have one more time for one more question in the back here. Hi.
Is it on? Yeah. My name is Sanchita Chakraborty. I work with the Association for New Canadians as the diversity officer. Great session, so much to learn from all of you, I'm serious about it. When I take notes, it means I'm very sincere about this when I say this. I know Sherry, your that one comment was really great. It's going to stick with me because as a person of BIPOC, myself, I sometimes see how when you say that, you know, first thing is believe when I say this. Often in my presentation or training, I do try to say that, you know, English is not my first language. I've been speaking English for the past 20 years, and it's still, I'm working on it. I'm polishing it every day. But sometimes when people hear me speaking with such fluency, it is sometimes difficult for them. Maybe, why are you still making mistake? 20 years, how long do you take, you know? And then the sensitivity comes in part in the back of my mind, or sometimes I do get to hear, you know, not in a harsh way, because we are Canadians, we're becoming more and more educated with race and racism and all this, but it's still quite prevalent. We know that. So in direct message, you would get through the comments that, oh, there she goes playing the race card of not, if I'm making a mistake in English, so I'm making an excuse, you know. So that's the part that's going to stick when you said first thing first is believe when someone is saying it. I love what Paul, you said at some point. I think you didn't say that. Maybe you meant it, and I wrote it down some points there that things that we, sorry, I'm taking a little bit time because I love this learning. If I understood correct, then things doesn't need to be changed or cannot change, shouldn't change, you know, the BIPOC, the color of my skin, ability or disability doesn't have to change. The way I am. My identity, my choice, that is, my humility, cultural humility, my humanity, this all doesn't need to change. But what can be changed and needs to be changed or should be changed is mindset, mentality, attitude towards others, society at large. So this is my take on Paul. I don't know, is that correct, Paul? Okay. So last but not the least, here comes the question. How do we, Sherry, how do I interact with people, someone, I don't know, with such mentality where how do you make people believe? Sorry,
You don't. That's not up to me. I can't make anybody do anything. It's up to everybody in this room. It's up to everybody who's tuning in online to choose to believe the person who's in front of you. I can't make anybody believe anything, and I've definitely come to learn that and have been harmed by my attempt to really try to make people see, because you're not going to. It's an attitude thing. People need to be open to learning, open to wanting to hear, and open to wanting to believe. We've got an open audience here. You came here on purpose. So I mean, those are the right folks to share this with, but we can't make somebody believe. But we also don't need to allow them to harm us either when they don't. And to say, this is not my space. And to speak up and say, this is not my space because, and to actually say, like, here's how you harmed me, so that they can use that as a learning opportunity if they want to learn. And if they don't, eat my dust, buddy. I'm gonna run way ahead of you.
I thought Mandy'd be the hard act to follow, but you're a hard act to follow, I gotta say. One of the things that we, as members of the disability community, and I guess in any equity deserving community in this country deserves to, or needs to keep in mind, is that as much as we want it to change now, it won't. I talk at work about generational changes. So I went back to my story about Joanne McDonald. I won't say how many years ago, but it was a generation ago when I met Joanne. She was fighting for curb cuts, blue zone parking, all this kind of things now that are almost taken for granted, but it took 40 years. And so the changes that we all want to see happen tomorrow, the reality is, not that we're happy about it, but it will be generational change. Around inclusion, my great belief in the future is that the generation that's in kindergarten to grade 6 right now is the first generation that's growing up with inclusion as a logical and normal part of life. They'll be the leaders that just say, that don't question it, just say, yeah, of course. How about, that makes total sense, because they're learning it from a young age. So that's the generation where you'll see the greatest change. It's just that for many of us, I guess for all of us in this panel, it doesn't happen quickly enough.
One last question.
Thank you. I'll try and keep it short. I know people want to get a coffee. My name is Mike Keogh. I chair a group called Older Workers of Newfoundland and Labrador. Very quickly, though, I must relate something that happened here perhaps 10, 15 years ago. This was a hotel, the Battery Hotel. And I owned some taxis. I was called up here about 8 o'clock in the evening because I had drove a station wagon, and a gentleman in a wheelchair, an old style wheelchair that didn't fold down, wanted to go downtown to a business meeting, a business dinner. And we didn't have a van to give him. So in the process of assisting him into the taxi, he fell. That wasn't what the taxi was designed for. He fell. He was very gracious, very kind. And it was so embarrassing. It took maybe and immediately became more of an advocate than I ever was. It took 7 to 10 years to get the city of St. John's to put on an accessible cab. I had drove the first one, have a picture of it on my phone. But that's what I mean in terms of fighting for getting something. City Hall sat on disability taxi licenses for 5 years in a drawer and wouldn't activate them. So sometimes those difficulties are the thing. But anyway, I apologize for taking so much time, but it just means so much. As an aging workforce, many of our people who need to continue to work to survive, who don't have enough money to buy food or get pets medication or keep heat, need to continue working. But they're not tech savvy, and the vast majority of them are women. They don't have, for the most part, pensions to offset. They're the bigger group. So I'm wondering, if perhaps very quickly, do you see age as an area of diversity or inclusion or even a disability in the work that this group does this morning? Because there's more and more coming. Thank you. I apologize again.
What I would like to say there is I definitely connect a lot with different seniors groups and advocacy groups. We've definitely connected and met as well. And yes, we would see any disability, whether you were born with a disability or it's something that you acquire with age, that's still a disability. So absolutely, if regardless of age or how you came to be disabled, then absolutely we would consider you within the group of people with disabilities that need support for sure. My view on it.
There's an expression. I want to say first, Mike, thank you for your advocacy around accessible taxis. I was privileged to be there at the when that first taxi was launched. So thank you for your work for 10 plus years on that. There's an expression that there's two ways that you become disabled. You're either born with it, I was, or you acquire it. And suppose that you live a natural life, we'll all acquire one. So I don't know if aging is a disability in as much as it brings disability into our lives. So my expression now is when I walk somewhere and somebody holds the door for me, which I have no problem with. I walk right through it. I got no problem. You know, if you want to hold the door, that's great. But now I can't figure out if they're holding it for me because I'm disabled or I'm old.
Double jeopardy.
Double jeopardy. I just say, cool, you're holding the door. Thanks very much, right? So I don't know as much as Mike that would see, age as a disability in as much as it tends to bring disability into one's life. I think the issue about age, especially in the workforce, which I know you do a lot of work around, is it's another element of an element of society that's equity deserving and is right now not receiving that equity. So I think that's where it fits into the overall equity deserving groups within the country. The aging workforce, the older workforce, I should say, it fits into that very well.
Thank you. And Paul gets the last word for this panel. You get the last word for the panel, Paul. Okay, thanks everybody. Really appreciate it. Stephanie, thank you for moderating.